Comes to platform games in the 80s, it was a world full of colour, weird creatures, and a lot of jumping on things, with this style of game clearly aimed at a younger audience. But as the 90s rolled into view, different types of platform games began to appear. Games that had a very different look and feel, and that were obviously catering to a slightly more mature audience. A French software company called Delphine Software created a truly groundbreaking game for this time period. A game that would really set itself apart visually with, at that point, a rare form of graphics for a platform game, and also in the playability department with no conventional level design, no end of level bosses, no scoring, and no heads-up display. Another World, or Out of This World as it was known in some regions, was one of the best games to ever come out of the 16-bit generation of video gaming, utilising custom cutscenes to push the narrative of the story and an interesting set of controls. This game truly was the beginning of proper story-based games for the home computers. Released in 1991 to the Amiga and Atari ST formats, the game became an overnight hit and a must-have title for those formats, and in 1992 it was released on the 16-bit consoles, the Sega Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo. I first played Another World at a friend's house on his Atari ST, and I can remember being blown away by this game. This was like nothing I had seen before on a home computer. At times, it felt like I was playing an interactive movie, and when it came out on the Super Nintendo a year later, I had to have it. But my SNES mate got it for Christmas that year, based on my hype of the game. The version I am playing here is the Super Nintendo version, but to be honest, there is such little difference between the versions, it really doesn't matter what version you play. It's a game that just about everyone I have ever known has loved. The game provides this scrolling excerpt from the main character's diary. Lester Knight scribbles down notes while he can, and this provides some background for the story, but that is not where the game starts. This cutscene was very impressive for its time, although the claims of the car being a Ferrari are hard to believe. Even in 1991, I am sure Ferrari keys look better than this. Anyway, the cutscene shows Lester running an experiment that goes awry, and somehow transports him to a different world. And this is where the game begins, with absolutely no clue you have taken over either. It just starts. I have to talk about the visuals in the game, as these are impressive. Today, they seem very bland. Everything is a kind of blue or grey, and when compared to other platform games of the era like Mario and Sonic, then it's almost like another world is like the Wizard of Oz, but in reverse. But I think this look helps lend itself to the more serious approach to platform gaming than its contemporaries of the time. The visuals came about due to a real lack of computing power at the time. The game was originally designed for the Commodore Amiga, which, while a powerful machine, still had limitations in terms of visuals. So the decision was made to use vector outlines. These would require less memory than, say, sprite-drawn graphics, and they were chosen for this reason. The animations of certain elements of the characters was done using rotoscoping, similar to those found in Prince of Persia. The vector lines idea was genius, all due to its simplicity. You mark 2, 3 or 4 or however many points on a screen and it draws a line between them, creating a shape. You can then fill in that shape with colour to provide a 2D looking polygon. The end result was that the main characters in the game would use polygons and the backgrounds would use bitmap graphics, which is why the backgrounds tend to look less detailed than other elements of the game. But on the whole, the appearance of the game is very striking. It didn't look like anything else, and it wasn't a look that was copied a lot either. It is one of those instantly recognisable games from that era of gaming. For the Super Nintendo version, the Super FX chip was considered, and in fact used in development, but the cost of the chip would have made the game super expensive, and so it was dropped, and in an effort to keep the costs down, the slower ROM set was used instead, which may explain some of the slowdown seen in the SNES version. For a more in-depth look at how the visuals are pulled off, I do encourage you to check out Modern Vintage Gamers channel, which I will link in the description below. For the console versions, the sound got a little tweak. The home micros had very little atmosphere due to a complete lack of music, but the console versions had music added to certain scenes to create a little bit of tension, and it certainly did work. Playing the Atari ST version was like sitting in church on a Sunday. Very quiet, no atmosphere at all. Playing the console versions felt more like you were taking part in some kind of interactive movie or cartoon. The gameplay is great, but be warned, this is a game where massive amounts of memorization and trial and error are needed in order to beat the game, and you will die a lot. Probably a few dozen times until you get it right, but when you die, you do get some impressive death scenes played out for your enjoyment. With cost cutting and force, the cartridge did not come with a battery backup, but you do get passwords thankfully, and you can get all of these online now, so you can start at any sequence you like, and as the game has no score or no different ending, all of the codes are the same. And that is unfortunately the problem with Another World. Once you complete it and learn the sequences and stuff, you can complete the game in about 30 minutes. And while it's great fun to play it through without dying once, as it then seems like a movie, this is the only reason to come back and play it. There are no additional difficulty settings, no other possible outcomes. It's very rigid and plays like a well-written script. When it was released, the small size of the game was a source of annoyance for a lot of reviewers. And on the Super Nintendo, this was a game that was £45. Knowing it could be beaten in 30 minutes or less, no reason to play it through again, meant this game only appealed to a small audience. But reviewers did look past that, and they were right to do so. Should we only spend money on things if the enjoyment they give lasts a long time? Absolutely not. And Another World was a fun game to play, and only once you had beaten it and mastered the timing of the sequences was it a short game. To get to that stage, there may have been 3 to 4 hours playing just to get to that level. My SNES mate couldn't see the appeal of this game, but he didn't understand. This was the beginning of a great revolution in video games, a gripping story, and one told without a single word or update in the game itself. This was the hook that would keep people playing to the end. Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo had 96 levels in all. 96? I mean, that's a lot. But there are loads and loads of people who played it and only discovered about 48 of those worlds. They never felt the need to go back and play the game to find everything. Another World compelled the player to see it through to the end, to see what happens to Lester, and see how, if at all, he would make it back. And I felt these story narratives were the way forward for gaming, especially with 32-bit and CD-based gaming on the horizon. This is how you can get players to invest time in games. My mate lent me this game for a good few weeks, and while I only needed it for a few days to be able to play it through in one sitting, this was a game that I enjoyed massively. If only it was a little bit longer. Another World was a massive commercial success for Delphine, shifting just over 1 million copies in the 1990s. It received positively high marks in all the video game publications of the time. It had won several Game of the Year and Best Game awards, and truly became an instant classic overnight. Another World for me is one of the greatest video games ever made, and if you haven't played it in some form, then you definitely should. You will not be disappointed. And that was my look back at Another World. If you like this video, then please do give me a sub and a thumbs up, or maybe even a comment or two below about your memories of Another World. And a big thank you to all of those who have subscribed to my channel and commented on my videos. I do appreciate all of the feedback and all of the comment. And that's all from me, folks. Thanks for watching.